They've been a popular radio team on WKTI since the early 1980s. Bob Reitman and Gene Miller are my special guests next on I Remember. Hi, I'm Jim Peck. Welcome to I Remember. Joining me tonight are Bob Reitman and Gene Miller. Radio listeners have been tuning into their morning show on WKTI for almost 20 years. Take a look.
They are recognized more for their voices than their faces. WKTI's radio morning team of Bob Reitman and Gene Miller are usually anonymous until they speak.
So we'll come back with you guys in a couple of minutes and do a Hollywood Hot Dish on WKTI with Danuta and Christy.
I'm just going to mainline the honey like you do with the Ready Whip.
Just right in the mouth?
Take the
yeah. And get a real happy buzz.
With their producer, Gino Salamone, Reitman and Miller are the wake-up call for thousands of Milwaukee radio listeners. Bob Reitman had been kicking around the radio scene with stints at WTOS, WZMF, and WQFM before landing at WKTI in 1980. Gene Miller's first radio job was in Stevens Point. In 1981, he went to work for WQFM here in Milwaukee. Miller came to WKTI in 1982 to be paired with Reitman. The radio duo will celebrate 20 years together in September of 2002. Their easy banter sometimes lands them in hot water with what they call their 7 listeners. Here Bob Reitman explains to a woman why the Edmund Fitzgerald would not be bringing Tickle Me Elmo dolls to Milwaukee.
The Edmund Fitzgerald's been in the bottom of Lake Superior for 17 years, and Captain Hazelwood put his oil tanker into a glacier off of Alaska and dumped 40 trillion gallons of oil. It was a joke. Are you mad at me?
Over the years, Reitman and Miller have covered several Olympics and plan to attend the Winter Games in Utah in 2002. They interview big-name entertainers and give visiting dignitaries souvenirs of Milwaukee. And as radio personalities, they have used their status as celebrities to benefit local charities. At heart, Bob Reitman and Gene Miller consider themselves to be just a couple of guys with the world's greatest job. At least 7 listeners would agree with them.
Would you two have been successful as solo acts?
No. Next question.
Yeah, that would have implied that I would have had some redeeming skills of my own, and that wouldn't have happened, I don't think. No, something had to come along to cultivate that, hence this.
Actually, and there's living proof that I could not have done this without him, because I was at KTI for about 2.5, 3 years before he showed up and failed miserably twice. And then he came along and I thought, oh God, is he good enough to save this, to make something out of nothing? And I had no other skills, and it was sort of pathetic. I luckily was handed a boy genius. And is that exactly what I was?
That was wonderful, yeah.
And
how did that happen? How did you two get together?
Go ahead.
We had met each other once at a concert. We knew who each other were, and we said hello, shook hands, and it was at an REO Speedwagon concert.
Yes, it was.
And I said, be fun to work with you someday. I just offhand comment. But he had a boss, a friend named Dallas Cole, who he can tell you about and what happened.
Well, Dallas had worked up in Stevens Point, where I was a little snot-nosed cub news reporter, and he was a disc jockey at the time, and Dallas wanted to be a radio program director, and those who met him knew that he just had it. He had great ideas, and came to Milwaukee and was able to cultivate them. Wound up at KTI as program director. Bob was already there, and he wanted to tweak the morning show a little bit. I had come to Milwaukee. I was working at another station. He called me. We had a couple of conversations back and forth, and he asked me if I'd want to come on over and work with him and work with Bob, and I jumped at the chance because I always wanted to work under Dallas, to have the chance to work with a guy like Bob, a Milwaukee radio legend, and to work for the journal company, to work in the same building with TMJ and Channel 4. I'd grown up listening and watching those guys, and just to be in there would have been an honor and a privilege, and I jumped.
There is nothing like walking up those steps and going into that lobby knowing that you work there the first time.
absolutely true, especially if you were a 6-year-old kid like I was and was on the Grenadier show.
You weren't.
Yes. And I was interviewed by, here come the senior moments now. They did a show outside, and Gordy Thomas did the show. And he looked at me and said, "You have such long eyelashes." And I remember being in the lobby of that place. The lobby of our building is incredible. And to think that I would end up there someday, especially after being around for a while and not being there. It was always the place that we wanted to end up. It was an honor to work there. So the next time I saw him after the Ariel Speedwagon concert was the first show we did together. He walked in one morning.
Was it an immediate click, or did you have to kind of figure out who's going to do what and who's going to be what and that sort of thing?
There were meetings after those shows, the first, what was it, maybe 6 months to a year,
I don't remember.
Where Dallas would sit us down and we would go over a tape of the show, break by break by break.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, it was, but he was good at
That hurts.
It wasn't your typical radio ream session. It was more of a, what were you thinking, what were you doing? This is great, do more of this. It was very, very positive. But, we'd get off the air at 10 o'clock, and sometimes I think we'd come back at 2 in the afternoon, and that's when he could first see us. And then we'd stay some days till 4, 5, 6 at night, depending on how the session went.
And we wash our clothes in the Milwaukee River and come back and do the show. It was a very painful monk-like experience, a religious experience. Frankly, I'll give you another answer to that question you just asked. I think that just about anybody that's halfway decent human being could be successful working with Miller. I'm a little more difficult, I think, and he makes it a lot easier. I think that I know that to be a fact.
I think you're a little hard on yourself, though, too. I mean, you'd never had a partner before. You'd been a solo act. You were Reitman, and you had cultivated a following and had done incredible things at other stations. And to ask somebody then to take on a partner, someone that he had met once at a concert in passing, and just say, "Okay, now make it work."
Little ruddy-cheeked youngster.
Well, I did have 2 partners prior to Gene, 2 women in succession. And they're both wonderful people, but it just didn't work. And you start thinking, maybe I can't do this. Because like Gene said, I worked nights by myself, basically playing music. That's what I love to do. To do mornings and share, I thought, God, I don't know if I can do this. I failed twice. And he came along, and third time was just a charm.
It's funny because my son worked with you when he was interning, and he said you were both impossible. So I don't know what.
He was like that. We had a lot of trouble with him. Yes. We helped him carry his stuff out of the building. We took, turned him in.
When did you get into stunts? How long did that take before you said, "Hey, let's try something"?
I don't know if it was a conscious effort. It was our charge always was to stir up the people. To get them to talk, good or bad, just make people think, make them talk. And at the time, nobody else was really doing that sort of radio. I mean, there was some of it going on. Larry the Legend had his shtick, but that was totally unique and totally his. And I don't think we ever sat down and said, okay, how do we get in the papers? How do we do something? It's just let's talk, let's do things, let's read between the lines of stories in the paper and see what we can do that might be a little bit goofy and make it a little bit bigger than life.
Yeah, we just live our lives and then we come talk about it like everybody else does. So hopefully we were talking about the same things, like the building of Miller Park, obvious things like that, but the one that we got lucky on was the Cabbage Patch thing, which was not a stunt. That was just an idea we had of that was when the craze was going on and people were beating each other up to get these things. We said they were going to be dropped over County Stadium at noon. B-29 will bring it over, hold up your MasterCard, we'll take a picture, you catch the doll, bring a mitt, we'll send you a bill. It was something that we created that morning, did it, and forgot about it.
Never expecting anyone to. Yeah.
No, we're in the production studio taping the next day's promo, and the phone starts ringing. Stadium's getting calls. It ended up making, over 100 newspapers around the world, 2 networks, Time, Sports Illustrated. So we got very, very lucky. It was beyond our control. It was a perfect punchline to a rather sad situation. Right around this time of year, Christmas is coming, and these mothers and fathers are beating each other up to get these Cabbage Patch dolls, so we got lucky.
And you offered them hope.
We did.
And
We
then
lied to them.
Crushed their hearts.
And actually, one day, one of those people did come up and introduce herself just a few years ago. She said, I have to tell you, I was out there, but she had to wait about 10 years before she could admit it.
Do you get recognized much?
By law enforcement people? Yeah, you know, we do because we're around. We've been around a long time.
The station's done a lot of promotional stuff with us too. That kind of removes the mystery of who's behind the mic. We've done enough commercials. We did some things on Daybreak on Channel 4 in the morning. So, yeah, you get recognized. You hope you do. You know, it means you're doing the job right. If you're not getting recognized, or if somebody doesn't recognize your voice, that's the one that always freaks me out. Yes. When you go to pay for your gas and you say thank you or something like that, somebody goes, I know that voice. Yes. In 2 words. That's humbling, flattering.
It's also surprising, and it is surprising.
It's the day you wish you really would have taken that shower.
But the problem is we've had so much exposure that the station realizes that now, and our newest commercials, we've been replaced by puppets. So they're trying to tell us something. I'm not sure what it is, but we don't look like our puppets.
But I loved hearing that you enjoy it, because you get the sort of thing where it's, oh, I mean, it's such a burden. I go out and people talk to me. I mean, it's just so difficult.
Yeah, it's really tough to have somebody go, hi, how you doing?
Yeah, love your show.
Yeah.
I mean, what an awful thing to have to hear.
You spend a lot of time with these people. They let you into their lives. They control that. It's radio, so it's a very intimate medium. And people that have been listening to you for years, you have become part of their life. And that's a precious honor. And to be able, when they come up and say hello to you, we're already their friends. Then we just complete the circle by meeting them.
It's when they start throwing stuff that gets a little rough. But you learn, you know, to drive like this so you can dodge the stuff as you're pulling away.
We have bodyguards and metal detectors.
Do they expect you to be Reitman and Miller? It's a different persona, and
they'll always ask where he is. You know, like it's Saturday morning and I'm at the corner gas station and they think Bob should be in the trunk, or you know, we should be going to my kid's basketball game together, or I'm sure you get it too.
Do you pal around at all?
Now, see, we haven't even talked about this in years. That's why he just asked me if it happens. It happens all the time. Where's Miller? And I don't come back on Monday and say, all these people want to know where you are. I just say he's in a bar, and he has his stock answer, and. It's like, you know what it's like? It's like living in a town of 5,000 people. It's like it just brings everything closer to us. We get to meet more people, and it's a thrill.
Did you want? Is this what you had in mind when you were kids? Did you just stand and look in the mirror and pretend you're doing shows or anything like that?
I did. I was a freak. I was a radio nerd. Yeah. I used to pretend I was Ronnie Radio, and yeah, that's what I wanted to do. You had a loftier goal.
No, I remember hearing Chuck Berry and rock and roll and being 13 and not having to work in the summer yet, and thinking to myself, let's see, girls, rock and roll, no work. I got to figure out how to do this the rest of my life, and I've succeeded.
Did you ever want to be a performer?
No, I just didn't want to work.
I see.
No, really. I mean, I just wanted to listen to music and write poetry and talk to people, and I'm just really lucky that Marconi did what he did. I mean, I considered myself pretty much talentless in terms of other things, and because of his help, just sitting there talking is what we do. It's not really brain surgery. I mean, there's people out there working hard, long hours, 2 jobs, and we're pretty lucky.
Oh yeah,
but you did some performing, and I think we may have a clip of that, Jane. If we have that, let's put it up, and
what is this?
You can comment on it.
Oh, good. you know.
You kind of grew into your looks.
You know.
I love you, Peggy Sue. With a love so rare and true. Hail Peggy! My Peggy Sue.
You know.
Don't go turning on the crew.
All right, cut. That's fine.
Oh, well, I love
You know, this is
Got a big finish coming up.
Peggy Sue.
All right.
Oh, look at that. That's gold.
Could I have an honest reaction from the floor crew and the camera people, please? There you are.
Yeah, I think you got an honest reaction.
Whoever gave you that is.
Toast.
Can I congratulate people on television?
Yes, certainly.
That was something I never should have done. The sunglasses.
You can't
were
even
so
say you were drunk. You were sober. I saw you.
Well, let's talk about brouhaha on our TV show. No, that was ridiculous.
It was a one-shot deal. The aforementioned Dallas, our boss at the time, said, we got to do a TV show. You guys got to do a TV special. Things were starting to, the show was starting to catch on, and Channel 4 still had the old auditorium in there. And, I mean, it was a beautiful facility. I mean, it was all we had to do was plug in cameras and have some talent. Well, we had the cameras, but we had no talent. And it had to be the longest hour of our lives.
I don't know. I got to tell you, you don't see stuff like that on television today.
No.
You really don't.
And the certain moments of your life are crystallized. Crouching behind the curtain with him, waiting to come out on stage, we looked at each other and said, what are we doing? We both knew we had no business doing this. The place was packed.
There were people lined up. They had to put them in another studio so they could watch the monitors. The auditorium filled up. And I'm thinking, boy, there's got to be something better to do for people on a Friday night than this.
My
and
mother
we went out
was there.
and proved it.
My mom, how could I do that to my own
Never
family?
spoke to you again.
No. I mean, she loves me. That was the longest, most painful. We never should have. Why did we do that?
Never did it again.
No.
Cooler heads prevailed.
I thought they burned the original on that.
How did you two end up on the credits for Naked Gun 2.5?
We wrote it.
Yeah,
the
stuff
makeup,
about the Zookers?
that was we wrote it.
No, our producer got us in on that. Gino, who was just taking a very neat, clean little local radio program and giving it the star power that's, I think, Gino. Giving us some star power and a lot of connections. Got us involved with Leslie Nielsen, who used to come to town, shoot the Lombardi golf promos, and struck up a relationship with him, and pretty much just did what it took to get a walk-on part in Naked Gun. And if you look really close in the lab scene, we're about that big, and we're on for, I think, 0.75 seconds.
It was that. There's another terrible moment. They premiered it at the Fox Bay Theater in Whitefish Bay. We invited everybody. We'd spent a day shooting this scene. They even flew in sausage from Usingers. They had a Milwaukee, Wisconsin day. They had a polka band. I mean, this huge scene with this laboratory and this machinery, 12, 14 hours of shooting. We invite our family to the movie. We're sitting there. We know the part's coming up. It was like getting hit in the stomach with two fists, because it was boom, boom. It was gone. And, you know, it was like, what? And we finally rented the video. You freeze frame it, and we still were blurry on it. I mean, but they put us in the credits because they were nice guys.
Yep, they did us a favor.
What had you guys been doing before you got together?
Time.
Breaking rocks in the hot sun. I was at WQFM. I was doing a morning show there. Before that, I'd worked in Stevens Point.
And you were in the grocery business.
I was, yes. In high school, I was a stock boy. I can still pack a mean bag, and I may have to do that depending on the next ratings board.
Grocery Clerks Union.
Yep.
Yeah.
Once you throw enough watermelons off the back of a truck on a 90-degree summer day, you realize that heavy lifting is not for you, and you go to the next comfortable thing, and that was radio.
And I'd been in radio since '67. Started at WWM and went through various stations, including QFM and ZMF and TOS. And before that, I was a manager of a cemetery. And I was. And that my godfather owned what was Wanderers Rest, which is on 64th and Burleigh. And I worked there through high school, and then became an office manager of a cemetery. And then it's a natural progression from there to working with Gene in the radio.
I'm just having this image of you as managing a cemetery, and it doesn't link up.
Well, I liked it. I mean, I hope the people are believing this. This is serious. I mean, I did do that. I'm not going to start with. I used to cut the lawn and do the outside stuff, and then I moved into the office and did that. And this is ripe for one-liners, and I'm not going to do it. But at that time, we started Kaleidoscope, the underground newspaper, and WUWM started the FM underground radio thing.
I didn't realize you were connected with Kaleidoscope.
Poetry editor.
Oh, okay.
And
John Coyce. And,
yeah, John's still my best friend. He's
is he in this area?
No.
Oh.
No.
He'd be a great guest.
Yeah, I'll tell him to come in and see.
Get him up. Yeah,
right.
I'd love to. I haven't seen him in about 30 years.
But cemetery business is a good business. There's not much you can say to that, is there?
There is, but I'm exercising the same restraint that you are.
I'll give you a one-sentence wrap-up on that. I spent a lot of time as a younger person meeting older people, because that's usually who comes out there to visit. And that enriched my life a lot, to get to know older people. I enjoyed that a lot.
You've traveled the show. You've done some neat stuff. But the thing that struck me was that you did an exchange program with the Soviet Union.
You picked our proudest moment.
1986. Yeah, that was pretty incredible. It was at the right around or during Reykjavik, when Reagan went to Reykjavik to meet Gorbachev, and things were pretty tense back then. But we had a lot of help. A lot of people pulled strings to make it happen. The people in Moscow were very accommodating. And
did they want you, or was it a thing where they simply wanted someone from America and someone decided that you should go?
We asked if we could go. They kept on saying yes, they being our government. The doors just kept on opening, and they were eager to open the doors a little bit. That was perestroika, right?
Right.
And looking back on it, it was still under communism. So after years of hearing how bad communism was, you really saw how dehumanizing it was. We did see that, but the people there were wonderful.
Yeah.
Did you actually do a show there?
5 or 6?
Yeah, we did a week's worth in Moscow. Then we got to travel. We got to go down to Soviet Georgia, to Tbilisi, travel around there. And yeah, I think in all the whole trip lasted 2.5 weeks. And it was like being on another planet. It was incredible. And then their representative came back to Milwaukee and spent, I think, about a week and a half, 2 weeks here, and was on our show a couple times and showed him Milwaukee. And then that was it. We never saw him again, and that was kind of sad. That's one of the only...
Probably disappeared into the gulag after meeting you guys.
They had, what, 16 or so people at their table in Moscow from all different walks of life, and we had the same in Milwaukee. So you could ask somebody in Moscow, do you have fish fries on Friday night? Do both the husband and wife work? What do you do about daycare? Questions, what's it like over there? It was like communicating with another planet, and they would ask us the same things.
Right.
There was a radio bridge.
And it wasn't it wasn't about the government or anything like that, or the ideological stuff. It was all along the lines of lifestyle. Why do you drive with only your parking lights? Why do you take your windshield wipers off when you park your cars?
I didn't know that.
They do that because there's not enough of them, and people would lift them.
They'd steal.
Was it pretty? Let me try that again. What you did over there, was that pretty straight, or did you get to do some shtick? And how were you received by the folks in Russia at that time?
It was pretty straight. I think it wasn't deadly serious, but it was fun. Mm-hmm. It was conversational.
Strangers in a strange land, I think, is the approach we took. Mm-hmm. And they provided us with guests. They'd say, "Who do you want to talk to?" And we'd say, "Find us one of these, one of those, one of them," and they would be there.
Although it was pretty much controlled by the government. They put us where they wanted to, mm-hmm. and showed us what they wanted to, pretty much.
Yeah, that guy in the trench coat that always seemed to be at the same restaurant you were in?
We were always with somebody.
Yeah.
We were always driven places.
I remember hearing that.
Yeah, when we knew that.
At the time, I don't think it didn't sink in. I think when it was all done, we realized, we never really had, except for the time when we were sleeping, a moment to ourselves. We were always on the go from 6 in the morning until 11, 12 at night, even dinner, everything. And it was not overt, like, eyes are watching you, but it was just, okay, tonight we're going to do this and that, and we're going to go here and there.
It was a great experience. How has radio changed over the say the 20 years you guys have been together, even back when you were singles?
Well, you're the radio head, and it's changed dramatically, especially the last few years. And here to explain that part of, the emergence of the new kind of radio, Gene Miller.
More computers, obviously. Technically, everything has just gotten bigger, faster, and more computerized. I think the most obvious change I've noticed over the years is the lack of local ownership, the emergence of the large chains that seem to have gobbled up everything. Again, that's what makes it nice working where we do. It's locally owned. Mm-hmm. It's Mod Journal. It's to other stations in town. I'm sure they look at it as the Death Star with Darth Vader on board calling the shots. But to us, it's a locally owned company that cares about Milwaukee. And that's not to say the other stations in town don't. But it's nice to know that if I want to go see the boss that runs the whole shooting match, I can go down to 4th and State and go up an elevator, and there he or she will be. And there's a commitment by this company to this community, and that may sound like I'm sucking up to those aforementioned moguls at 4th and State.
Yeah, it does, Gene. Yeah.
And hopefully they're listening.
Does that sound that way to you? Yeah.
It does, but he's also absolutely right.
No, it's true. And I worked there for 3 years on the television side, and you are right. But you talked about the multiple ownership, or the ownership of multiple stations, and you get Milwaukee music being programmed in Cleveland or someplace, right. And they got 1,200 stations or 1,500 stations around the country, and there's one guy punching the buttons for that. Who picks out what you do? Do you have freedom to do that yourselves?
The music?
Yeah.
No, that's all highly researched, and it's very democratic, and it's the stuff the people want to hear the most, that our audience wants to hear the most. Whoever handles that in our company, that's their job, and they take care of it. We take care of what's in between the songs and the commercials.
And that's up to us. I mean, we talk after the shows are over with, our bosses and all that about what worked and what didn't, but there is no, tomorrow you're going to do this, tomorrow you're going to do that, make sure it's all written down, and I want to see it before it goes on the air. Never, ever. We don't write anything down, and I think it shows. It might help if we did.
That went right out of my head.
Yes, it did. I saw it.
It was.
I saw it. It was a useless.
Yeah.
It was not a good question.
No.
It's gone.
Well, we'll go on to something else then. Is radio as much fun now as it was when you started? Television isn't. I mean, just in general.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah, but you look at the news. I mean, back at Channel 4, for example, we had Bill Carlson doing the weather. And he'd blow a forecast, and you'd come in and you'd throw snowballs at him.
Yes.
Nobody would do that today.
No. I used to watch Bill Carlson with a coffee cup.
Oh, yeah, it was
that's
wonderful.
great
Terrorize
stuff.
the poor man.
In 30 seconds.
It's researched a lot more. It's focus grouped and shot through various prisms before it reaches the listener's ear, more than it was maybe 20, 30 years ago, I think, when you could just go with your gut, play a record. There's a lot more emphasis on appealing to a certain audience, a certain demographic. It's gotten more restricted in that regard, always remembering, you're not going for the most people, you're going for the most of a certain age and gender of people.
And we do the same thing. Gene Miller, Bob Reitman, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, and I hope we'll see you next time as we continue to remember. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good show.